Amazing moment, little girl offers her teddy to a sad CEO. What happens next is transformative. Jason Turner sat in his high-rise office, staring out at the mesmerizing San Francisco skyline. The once vibrant city, a symbol of innovation and progress, now loomed before him like a phantom of dreams unrealized. He was 30 floors above the ground, and yet, he felt more isolated than ever. The massive layoffs that had stripped his company of its lifeblood haunted him daily. Each name on that spreadsheet still echoed in his mind, faces of co-workers turned friends, laughter that would never be heard in the hallways again. He should have felt proud as CEO. Instead, he felt empty. The tailored suit that hung off him now seemed a costume, loose and unworthy of the role he once commanded with confidence. He wandered into the park that day, seeking relief from the relentless cycle of deadlines and board meetings. Children's laughter and familial warmth surrounded him, but the joy felt like a distant galaxy, shining but unreachable. With every step, a wave of discomfort washed over him, a stark reminder of everything he had lost. Broken dreams had become his companions, wrapping around him like a suffocating cloud. His mind raced with questions. Was he fundamentally unworthy? Had every ounce of ambition led to this hollow outcome? The weight of expectations bore down heavily, causing the muscles in his shoulders to tighten. Then, he spotted her. Mia, a 6-year-old girl darting across the grass, her pigtails bouncing with each joyful step. Clutching a tattered teddy bear, she approached him without a hint of hesitation. "Here," she said, holding out the worn creature with its matted fur, eyes wide in earnestness. "Maybe this will help you feel better." For a moment, time froze. He didn't know how to react. A child innocent, pure, and intangible had offered him comfort when he felt most unworthy of it. "What's his name?" Jason finally managed, his voice a rough whisper. "Milo." She beamed with pride, and as they talked, the weight of his solitude began to lift, if only slightly. Layers of hardship unearthed, her mother working tirelessly, and Mia's dream of a better life. In exchange, Jason found himself recounting the pressures of his role, the burden of decisions and the faces of the team he had let down. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let us continue. As they sat together, surrounded by the bursts of laughter from the playground, Jason realized they were both searching for similar things: connection, purpose, security. The simplicity of her gesture stirred something long dormant within him, a longing for values overshadowed by ambition. Could this single act of kindness pivot his life from despair to purpose? Yet, as doubt and determination battled within him, he felt unease coil around his heart. Life in the business world hadn't prepared him for this, the prospect of hope igniting responsibility. How could he redefine his legacy in a world still dominated by profit? Watching Mia laugh as she hugged Milo, Jason grappled with the enormity of that realization. Was he capable of shifting gears when everything he knew clung to power and profit? He stood at a crossroads, the path before him an endless stretch of uncertainty. Could he reclaim what he thought had been lost forever? In that moment, a sickening twist of fear gripped him. Time slipped away, and he was left with only one thought echoing loudly: was he ready to transform? The sun began to dip below the horizon, casting elongated shadows across the park, each one a reminder of the weight pressing down on Jason. His mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts. He had spent years prioritizing metrics and profit margins, but today, in this vulnerable exchange with a child, he glimpsed a daunting possibility. What if his real legacy lay not in financial success but in human connections? The idea felt both exhilarating and terrifying. As he stood to leave, Jason felt a warmth spreading through him, the kind of warmth that seeks to ignite action. He had offered to walk Mia home, and as they strolled, she chattered about her favorite cartoons, her dreams of becoming an astronaut, and the possibility of flying to the moon. Here, in her innocent imagination, he found light. "What's your dream?" she asked, moving closer, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. A question that had become a distant echo in his mind suddenly became vibrantly loud. He paused, searching for a suitable answer. I want to make a difference," he finally admitted, feeling the weight of truth settle in his chest. Mia considered him with the seriousness only a child can muster. "Like helping people?" "Yes," he replied, surprised at the conviction in his voice. "Then, you can be like a hero." She clapped her hands, sending a ripple of joy through the air. Her words struck a chord deep within him. A hero. The notion danced in his mind. The realization hit harder than he expected. A hero wasn't necessarily someone who saved cities or fought villains, but rather someone who made a compassionate choice, someone who inspired others to be better. Why not him? Could he become the catalyst for change, not just within his company but also in the industry? As he walked, he began to envision a new direction, one driven by values rather than solely by the bottom line. Ideas formed like puzzle pieces fitting together: the importance of nurturing talent, fostering creativity, and creating an environment where employees felt valued. This was the kind of leadership he once aspired to but lost sight of amidst the corporate hustle. When they reached Mia's home, she turned to him with a wide grin. "I think you're already a hero, Mr. Jason." As she ran inside, her words lingered like an unshakable promise. A hero. Could he strive for such a role? The thought was both thrilling and daunting. He realized he needed to confront something he had been avoiding: the board's opinions and the shareholders' expectations. But even more importantly, he needed to confront himself, the self-doubt that had crept in during lonely nights overlooking the city skyline. With renewed determination, he walked away from Mia's house with action plans forming in his mind. He began crafting scenarios of how he could shift the company culture, imagining the conversations he would have, the proposals he needed to present. But as he approached his car, a wave of anxiety washed over him. What if he failed? Could he handle the scrutiny? The inevitable pushback from colleagues who thrived on the status quo? That familiar knot of fear tightened in his stomach. Yet, amid that fear, hope sparked a deep determination to reshape their viewpoint on what true success could mean. "Time to become the leader I was meant to be," he whispered to himself, clutching Milo, the teddy bear, as a symbolic token of this newfound commitment. But as he turned the ignition, something nagged at him. Was this commitment strong enough to silence the critics and hold true to his convictions? This would be the defining moment, the time to face the board and advocate for change. Would he be able to stand firm, or would he revert to the retreating shadows of doubt? As the car moved through the bustling streets of San Francisco, one thing was for certain: his road ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but also, a glimmer of transformative possibility beckoned him forward. Would he seize it, or would fear tether him back? Time, as always, would tell. The drive home felt different. Each stoplight in turn became a stage where Jason wrestled with an invisible opponent: his own anxiety. He replayed the day's events in vivid detail, the way Mia's laughter echoed in his mind, her hopeful eyes urging him to embrace a path he'd neglected. He could hear her voice, echoing the sing-song quality of innocent belief, urging him to be a hero. Arriving home, the familiar surroundings felt constricting rather than comforting. The spaciousness of his living room didn't invite welcome thoughts; instead, it felt like a vast arena for his doubts. He slumped into the leather couch, Milo resting beside him, the childish token reminding him of his commitment. Yet even with its presence, he couldn't escape the thoughts that spiraled. Could he really instigate the change he envisioned? The following day, he faced the board. The conference room buzzed with the clatter of laptops and restrained chatter, a stark contrast to Jason's racing heart. He'd spent hours crafting a presentation that wasn't merely numbers and projections but an emotional appeal, an ethos of humanity laced through the empirical data. But what if it fell flat? What if he appeared foolish in their eyes? With a deep breath, he stood for the first time at the head of the table, his palms lightly damp against the cool surface. As familiar faces looked at him with skepticism, he began speaking, his voice steady despite the tension coiling in his gut. "Thank you all for gathering today. I know we often discuss our quarterly profits and market projections, but I believe we must shift our perspective." Laughter echoed in the room, a blend of disbelief and amusement. "Shift our perspective, Jason? We're a business, not a charity," snickered Mark, his old college rival. The laughter stung, igniting a fire of frustration. It's not about charity, it's about creating a sustainable future, Jason retorted, regaining his composure. The tension in the room thickened as he pressed on. If we invest in our employees, nurture their potential, and align our mission with a more human-centric approach, our profits will thrive organically. Isn't that worth considering? But the board was not convinced. Questions flew, each a dagger aimed at his resolve. They challenged his ideas, leaning heavily on the status quo, insisting that profits should always come first. Jason felt his heart race, doubt creeping in again, but he recognized this defining moment is not merely about them, but about solidifying what he believed to then. He remembered Mia. Her unwavering belief in him ignited a spark, lifting him above the tides of cynicism. He drew upon every ounce of conviction within him and pushed back against the doubts that clamored for attention. I spent years chasing profit without purpose. I don't want to be just another CEO preserving a legacy built on cold statistics. I want our legacy to be human, about making lives better. The silence that followed was palpable, an uneasy stillness hanging in the air as eyes darted thoughtfully across the room. Jason could feel a shift, a crack in their hardened exteriors, but whether it would send ripples or sink like a ship remained uncertain. As the meeting dispersed, he lingered, processing every reaction and murmur exchanged in hushed tones. Doubt swirled through him, but so did a newfound belief that maybe he had planted the seeds of change. There could be a possibility here if he remained persistent. Empowered by the confrontation, he realized that this journey was about more than individual ambition. It restored a sense of purpose, and with the minute victories creeping into his conscience, confidence surged again. Yet, outside the doors of the conference room, the real challenge awaited him, the relentless pursuit to turn these flashes of hope into a tangible reality amidst a rigid, resistant landscape. Would he be able to rally others to embrace the vision, or would the tides pull him back once more? Jason knew he had to be prepared. Change would not come easy, but he had made his stand. Now, it was time to act on that commitment. As he stepped into the bustling world outside, one question loomed over him: at what cost would evolution come to fruition? The days following the meeting felt like a psychological labyrinth, each hour a segment of time twisted with doubt and determination. Jason immersed himself in the numbers, spreadsheets projected before him like battleground maps. He had devoted his career to dissecting data, a world where clarity reigned and marketing deadlines dictated urgency. Yet, the deeper he delved into figures, the more he felt their coldness against the warmth of his vision for a human-centric approach. Mornings turned into a routine of mediocrity punctuated by fog-coated drive times. Each drive to work became a reflection pool, forcing him to confront the tumult within. He recognized the pattern: the colder he was with himself, the less he could convince others. By midweek, he decided to break free of the confines of his corporate persona, seeking out Mia. He needed to recapture the clarity her unwavering belief had sparked. She was a manifestation of the hope he aspired to instill in his company. With a quick text, he initiated their reunion, his heart fluttering with anticipation. In the local cafe, she greeted him with an energetic smile, her presence filling the room with warmth. "What's going on in that analytical brain of yours?" she teased, as they settled into a booth. Jason hesitated, two opposing impulses colliding within him, one urging vulnerability, the other dictating a facade of professionalism. "I feel like I'm navigating a storm at work," he admitted, leaning in closer, lowering his voice. With every word, he recounted the board meeting, the skepticism, the laughter, the challenges. As he spoke, he hoped to stoke the embers of inspiration, not just in Mia, but within himself. "You've taken the first step," she replied, her gaze piercing through his doubts. "Sometimes, all you need is one person to start believing for a ripple effect." "I could really use that ripple," Jason said, a faint grin reaching his lips despite the heaviness in his heart. After their meeting, the drive back felt less burdensome. Instead of spiraling into self-doubt, he had a plan, a structured approach to move the conversation beyond the boardroom murmurs. He allocated each day of the following week to engage with a different department, to absorb their experiences and grievances. Listening, he reminded himself, would be just as powerful as speaking. The next morning, he began with human resources, intentionally framing the discussion around values, aspirations, and how people viewed their roles in the company. Taking notes hungrily, he discovered blind spots he hadn't previously considered: employee burnout, lack of mentorship, and, most disturbingly, a sense of disconnectedness from the company's mission. With each conversation, a mosaic of potential began to form in his mind. He envisioned a culture shift, a transformation where empathy met efficiency, forging the foundation of a new company ethos. Yet this wasn't merely a dream, it demanded execution backed by tangible commitment. Each subsequent engagement reflected the same themes: longing for purpose, a desire for mentorship, and hope for a brighter future. The voices resonated within him, awakening a resolve he had buried. A community, though fractured, existed behind the professional facades, waiting for someone to stitch together the elements of a shared vision. As he returned from his meetings, the weight of anticipation pushed against his chest. He reflected on his past choices, understanding that he needed to step away from the confines of simply being a CEO. He had to embrace the role of a changemaker, rallying his team not just for profits but for collective pride. However, moments before concluding the day, a creeping thought emerged like shadowed whispers: could he sustain this momentum? The following day brought another wave of uncertainty. As he planned to approach the board again, Jason realized this time he would share more than ideas. This presentation must carry the collective voice of his employees, their hopes, their dreams, the soul of the company itself distilled into a powerful narrative. With resolve solidifying into determination, he scribbled down his plans for the upcoming board meeting. The moment he glanced at his reflection in the window, he barely recognized the resolve staring back. The same man who a week ago was caged by doubt now envisioned a hopeful candor. Yet, as he steeled himself for the confrontation, he couldn't shake the feeling that the board's reaction could plunge him right back into despair. Would they embrace the heartbeat of humanity he sought to convey, or would they reject it, dismissing the tides of change he hoped to ignite? Inside him, a storm brewed, not of anxiety, but of potential. He recognized the path ahead was fraught not just with doubts, but with the promise of authenticity. Would he muster the courage required to articulate these revelations in the face of skepticism once more? The stakes had never been higher, and he was about to find out if his determination could truly shift the tide. The morning of the board meeting arrived, swathed in a tension that felt palpable even before he entered the office. Jason stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, letting the cityscape wash over him, each skyscraper a monument to ambition. Yet as the skyline blurred, reflections of uncertainty danced in his mind. Today would be pivotal, not just for his firm, but for him personally. His hands trembled slightly as he reviewed the slides, each one crafted with visceral insights from his employees, an amalgamation of voices begging to be heard. He questioned if he had indeed captured the raw essence of their experiences. They were counting on him to be their messenger, their advocate. Could he do them justice? The meeting room loomed before him like a fortress, stifling the breath of possibility. As he took his seat, murmurs of the board echoed around him, executives shuffling papers, exchanging knowing glances, their corporate armor in place. Jason's heart raced. Did they even comprehend the stakes? As he began his presentation, he felt an unexpected surge of resolve. The narrative unfolded as he spoke, a tale woven with empathy and aspiration. He infused their collective dreams: the weary engineer who longed for mentorship, the marketing associate reflecting frustration over a lack of direction. Each voice infused urgency into the data, transitioning figures from cold statistics to vivid stories. Yet, as he presented, Jason's resolve met the steely gaze of the lead board member, Ruth, a veteran who had little time for sentimentality. Her lips pressed into a thin line as if she challenged his authenticity, testing the tide he was trying to create. Jason, while I understand the need for a cohesive cultural narrative, our primary goal remains profitability. How do you intend to balance these ideals? Her question cut through his momentum. For a moment, doubt crashed around him, unfurling like the dark clouds he had managed to escape. But beneath that, a flicker ignited within, a desperate need not just to defend his vision but to drive it forward. Ruth, he responded, these are not opposing forces. Investing in our employees, nurturing their talents, creates a return that impacts our bottom line in profound ways. It's the lifeblood of innovation and productivity. As nods of acknowledgement began to flutter around the room, he pushed forward, sharing testimonials from employees who had echoed his fears: creatives stifled by bureaucracy, sales teams disconnected from the mission, and new hires lost in their first months. The more he spoke, the clearer it became that their suffering was not just a statistic, it was the company's heartbeat struggling to resonate. As he wrapped up, Jason's vulnerability peeled back layers of fear. He conveyed not just a vision, but a heartfelt commitment to instill a culture that highlighted each individual's purpose. He could feel his passion radiating, mirroring that undiscovered spark he had seen in Mia, yet just as he finished, a diverging thought invaded his mind. Had he overreached? Regardless of the board's initial response, what if they didn't share his vision? The very thought sent a chill up his spine. Ruth's expression shifted as murmurs traversed the board table, but he could read her stalwart skepticism. "We appreciate your insights, Jason, but culture change takes time and implementation comes at a cost. I don't see a clear path here." Remembering Mia's affirmation of the ripple effect, Jason embraced the moment, leaning in. What if we could pilot a project one department at a time? Test these initiatives without overhauling our operations immediately? This could be our first step. The conversation paused, breaths held as all eyes remained glued to the board. A surge of anxiety reeled through him, but he had relinquished fear for a purpose greater than his own ambition. As thoughts of potential triumph and fear intermingled within him, Jason realized one truth: his journey was just beginning. With each passing second, the outcome of the meeting remained uncertain, but he had already carved a path defined by courage. Yet, beneath that facade of determination, the fear of failure loomed once again. What would happen if the ripple remained just that, a ripple, never blossoming into a wave of change? The moment hung thick in the air, charged with potential. Would he emerge as a beacon for the transformation they needed, or would the board extinguish his flame before it could ignite? The silence in the boardroom was electric, laden with anticipation. Jason's breath hitched as he scanned the faces around him, each one a player in a game he was desperate to win. Ruth's steely demeanor lingered in his mind, a reminder of the stakes involved. What if his passion didn't resonate? What if he was detached from their vision, a lone warrior rallying for an unworthy cause? Yet within that doubt lay a spark of determination. He could feel it, a pulsating energy urging him to defy the shackles of his insecurity. The board's indecision hovered heavily, creating the perfect atmosphere for a pivotal moment. "Let us take that as a viable approach," Ruth finally said, her voice calculated, as if she had decided to entertain Jason's proposal for her own inscrutable reasons. A pilot program could indeed allow for evaluation without immediate long-term commitment. But, what resources do you propose to allocate to this trial? Jason's heart raced anew, adrenaline flooding his system. "We could start with the marketing team," he replied, urgency threading through his tone. "They've expressed the clearest need for mentorship and guidance. We can allocate a small budget for training sessions aimed at cultivating collaborative problem-solving strategies." As he spoke, clarity flooded his mind. This wasn't just about the pilot program, it was about tangible measures that would allow employees to flourish. He recalled how Mia had thrived under mentorship. What if others could unlock their potential just as she had? The board continued its deliberation, and Jason felt a hum of possibilities vibrating against his skin. Each question they posed revealed deeper layers of his plan, more facets of an uncharted approach to corporate culture. With each response, Jason leaned more into the details, pushing boundaries, advocating fiercely for the employees who had shared their stories with him. Weeks of doubt melted away, each moment of engagement reinforcing the belief that he could indeed drive transformation. The rhythm of his voice, steady and resolute, began to inspire confidence not only in himself but among the board members. He caught nods and murmurs of agreement. They were listening, truly hearing him, asking the right questions. "Let us make this more than just a series of workshops," Ruth continued, her eyes narrowing slightly. "If this is truly about culture, how do you plan to integrate these learnings into daily operations?" A surge of excitement shot through him, a realization crystallizing in his mind. "Follow-up sessions, feedback loops," Jason outlined, jotting notes as he spoke, "and we'll document progress within and beyond those piloted changes. We'll establish metrics to monitor efficacy and impact, ensuring our practices evolve continuously." "Yes, but you must understand," Ruth began, her voice tempered with skepticism. "Old habits die hard. Resistance is likely. Can you guarantee buy-in from the teams?" The question ignited another spark. "It begins with trust. We will involve team leads in drafting the implementation framework. If they are part of this journey, the culture will naturally evolve, aligning with our overarching goals. We are all in this together." At that moment, Jason felt a swell of empowerment. He was no longer on the defensive, scrambling for approval. He was a catalyst, and that realization began to shift the atmosphere altogether. Silence hung like fog in the room, but there was a palpable shift. The board members leaned in, genuinely engaging with his suggestions. As the dialogue unfolded with newfound momentum, Jason's mind raced. Each positive nod, each question, each suggestion shifted him further from his previous doubts. This was not merely an opportunity to advocate for his vision, he was crafting a blueprint for change within himself too. He envisioned Mia's journey and every employee inspired by their potential to evolve, but as the conversation reached crescendo, Jason felt the familiar pang of uncertainty gnawing at his insides. Had he truly built enough credibility to see this through? What if internal forces stalled the pilot or sabotaged the positive shift he envisioned? With lingering apprehensions threading through him, he forged onward, aware that every battleground needed a champion. Despite the fear that clouded him, he had embraced a mission. Uncertainty now transformed into the fuel driving him, not the chains binding him. As the meeting slowly wound down, Jason realized that he was standing at the precipice of change, ready to leap. Yet, looming in the shadows of his newfound hope was an unsettling question: would his proposal survive the board's final vote, or would it vanish into the echoes of defeat? The boardroom buzz began to settle, but Jason's heart raced steadily. He couldn't shake the thought that he was standing on the verge of a monumental shift both for the organization and within himself. As the last board member spoke, concluding the discussion, tension snagged in his throat. Would they see it through his eyes? The board's approval felt like a gateway, but the ultimate battle awaited him outside the polished glass doors. Once the deliberation concluded, Jason was ushered out into the hallway, still reeling from the weight of the discussion. He pulled out his phone, his hands slightly trembling as he glanced at the screen filled with missed notifications. Mia had texted a picture of a new marketing initiative, sparking hope within him. They were all entrusting him with their potential, and now he had to trust in himself even further. The air felt charged with both fear and exhilaration as he strode toward his office. He took a moment to steady himself, recalling the faces of each board member, the hesitation in their brows, and the flickers of agreement amidst their skepticism. He had sparked a conversation, but the road ahead promised obstacles. How could he ensure that enthusiasm transformed into actionable support? As the hours ticked by, Jason immersed himself in refining his strategy. He set up meetings with team leaders, crafting an approach that fused their insights with his vision. In collaboration, he believed they could shape the corporate culture together. He presented drafts, invited feedback, and created a shared sense of ownership around the pilot program. Each discussion ignited his passion further, revealing hidden competencies he never truly recognized within himself, the ability to guide, to inspire. But with every step towards implementation, self-doubt crept in like shadows at dusk. Would the leaders truly buy into the transformation? Or would they retreat to old routines, extinguishing the flame of innovation he'd worked so hard to kindle? Each session with the leaders revealed their nuances and fears, uncovering their resistance to change. Instead of shying away from this reality, he leaned into it, fostering an environment for candid conversations. Change brings discomfort, he said during one of the meetings. But growth emerges from the willingness to adapt. I'm here to navigate this alongside you. His voice was firm, and as he looked each leader in the eye, he noted the flickers of acknowledgement shared among them. Yet, within himself, Jason battled another fear: would he have the strength to persist when resistance surfaced? Moments of vulnerability would test him, and with every potential setback, he questioned his ability to remain an advocate. What if his vision shattered against the weight of reality? That evening, Jason found himself staring blankly at the spreadsheets on his computer. They represented progress, yet every number felt heavy with responsibility. He pushed his chair back and stood, circling the office to release pent-up energy. It was during this restless pacing that inspiration struck again. What he needed was a collective voice, a way to channel the uncertainty into a clear message. He drafted a company-wide email, inviting everyone to contribute their experiences of mentorship and collaboration. The stories they shared would serve as both inspiration and a reminder that growth was a shared endeavor. As he sent the email, a profound shift ignited within him. He was no longer just selling a program, he was cultivating a culture of shared experiences and voices. Finally, he felt a deep, palpable connection to what this proposal could become, transforming it from his solitary ambition into a common goal. With renewed vigor, Jason braced himself for the next board meeting. He had coaxed his way past the fear, but as he approached the door and saw the familiar faces ready to assess his initiative, doubt returned. Had he done enough? He exhaled slowly, footsteps firm but pulse rapid. Today's vote could determine the course of their organization. Would he be hailed as the champion of change, or would he face the disheartening silence of defeat? The clock struck the hour, and as Jason entered, the stakes felt higher than ever. Would he rise to the occasion? Or would this be yet another hope lost in the company's legacy? As Jason settled into the boardroom, each face around the polished oak table registered differently in his mind. Some were steely and resolute, others softened by a hint of curiosity. The moment he had anticipated feared had arrived. Would this collection of decision-makers see value in his vision or dismiss him outright? His heart shuffled between optimism and apprehension. As he opened his presentation, he carefully observed their reactions. The data danced across the screen, vivid projections illustrating a future brimming with potential. Yet, numbers were mere tools. They could not encapsulate the emotional crucible he had forged within the team. Eddie, a well-respected member, spoke first. "These figures are compelling, Jason, but can you assure us that everyone is truly on board?" His words echoed Jason's own doubts. Could he provide that assurance? Taking a breath, he leaned forward. "I understand your concerns, Eddie. Transitioning doesn't come without uncertainty. But change here means more than figures. It means evolving our culture to foster innovation. I have faith in our team and their ability to adapt." Jason could see the collective interest shift slightly, yet some brows remained furrowed. This was a dance of persuasion, and he needed to lead gracefully. As the discussion unfolded, he shifted tactics, introducing testimonials, voices from the team members who had rallied behind him, painting a vivid picture of what collaboration could yield. Mia's enthusiasm, captured in her eloquent words, shimmered like a guiding light. However, a sudden critique came from Karen, the CFO, sharp and unyielding. "But can we afford to gamble on this? You've painted a rosy picture, but we have limitations and goals to meet." Her focus was practical, and Jason sensed the nails digging into the boundaries of his vision. A shiver ran down his spine, but he steadied himself. It was time for deeper conviction. It was time to confront the looming specter of doubt. "Karen, I can't promise results overnight. Yet, I've seen firsthand how growing together can drive tangible returns, emotionally and financially. It's about long-term investment rather than a single quarter's output. We can't overlook the human element that propels our bottom line." Silence filled the room, thickening the tension. Jason felt the eyes upon him, expectant, skeptical. This was the moment he either stood strong or crumbled. A particularly nagging thought emerged: would he actually be worthy of their trust? Each board member watched him, not just for answers, but to gauge his belief in what he preached. The discussion moved towards an agreement, but his heart clenched with determination and fear. That was the crux of leadership, knowing he had to shoulder that connection to the vision and the weight of collective fears. As he left the boardroom, the pulse of anticipation thrummed in his ears. Had the vote tilted in his favor? The journey of change had started, but acceptance was only the beginning. He had ignited enthusiasm, yet the lurking shadows of doubt still whispered in the back of his mind. Setting his resolve, he made his way back to his office when his phone buzzed again. This time, it was Mia asking about next steps and how they could further engage the team. He felt a surge of gratitude for each steadfast anchor in his chaotic sea of doubt. Feeling a spark of energy, Jason mulled over their next move. Constructing a culture took time, and each leader's involvement mattered. They were the pillars after all. As he prepared his response to Mia, a thought struck him like lightning. What if the real battle wasn't just about convincing the board? What if the greater challenge lay in forging a true connection with the very people he aimed to serve? The realization hit him, igniting an electric charge in his pulse. He needed to probe deeper into the team's sentiments. This wasn't simply about facilitating change, it was about uniting voices in a manner that would echo far wider than boardroom walls. How could he harness this exploration of their experiences into an initiative that truly resonated with employees? Transitioning to a deeper understanding of the emotional landscape would be pivotal. The next meeting with the team would require an engagement strategy that encouraged vulnerability, a sharing of fears and hopes. What would it take to elicit authentic voices, ones that could illuminate a path forward? Jason's focus sharpened, drawing a resolute line between fear and hope. He was ready to transform doubt into discovery, but lingering fear coiled around his resolve. The questions loomed large: how to facilitate this connection, and could he pave the way for true collaboration? The answers awaited him. Jason stepped into the brightly lit conference room, his determination solidifying in the face of the daunting task ahead. The atmosphere felt different. Though the sun streamed through the expansive windows, casting warm beams across the polished table, he sensed lingering uncertainty among the team. They had recently witnessed the fervor of his presentation, but now they were waiting for him to deliver on that promise. He took a deep breath, recalling the last conversation with Mia. Their discussions had unveiled a maze of thoughts and feelings amongst the team. The time had come to create a safe space for those emotions to surface, where the team could not only voice their concerns but also share their aspirations for the future. He had to lead this initiative with sincerity, knowing full well that his own insecurities could be mirrored back to him. "Team, thank you for gathering today," he began, his voice steady yet warm, a subtle determination weaving through his tone. "We've discussed numbers, goals, and visions in the boardroom, but I believe it's time to engage personally. I want us to connect not just as colleagues but as human beings. Change is daunting, and I know you all share concerns. Let us open the floor to those issues today. I'm eager to hear your thoughts." He paused, gauging their reactions. Some nodded hesitantly, while others exchanged glances, the tension palpable. This vulnerability was his own risk. Opening up meant exposing potential vulnerability in himself, but he knew that sharing this space was essential for cultivating trust. As the discussion unfolded, a voice emerged. Ben, a relatively reserved member of the team, voiced his worries. "What if we fail? I mean, we've taken risks before and been burned. The stakes feel higher now." Jason leaned in, drawing from his own experiences. "It's completely okay to feel that way, Ben. I've felt it too. We've all faced setbacks at different points. But each scar tells a story of resilience, of what we can overcome together. This isn't merely a one-off project, it's a journey. Embracing failure allows us to learn, to recalibrate." A spark of understanding illuminated Ben's eyes, and Jason quickly recognized the shift in energy. He sensed others leaning in, ready to engage. Encouraged, he directed the flow of conversation, urging team members to share their hopes alongside fears. As voices began to rise, a rush of momentum filled the room. Mia spoke of her desire to innovate and bring fresh ideas, but also the anxiety of presenting them among seasoned veterans. Angela shared her fear of being overshadowed and her longing to feel valued for her contributions. With each voice that entered the discussion, Jason felt the atmosphere transforming. The vulnerability he initially feared began cultivating a deeper connection. Yet amidst this budding camaraderie, Jason's mind occasionally veered back to his self-doubt. Was he truly entitled to lead this charge? Would these revelations only serve to amplify his own uncertainties? Each moment of introspection, however, was accompanied by an undeniable realization: their shared vulnerability was a treasure trove of potential. "Thank you for your honesty, everyone," he concluded, urging a proactive energy. "Let us capture these thoughts and outline actionable steps. How can we move forward together? What support do you need from me?" The team began brainstorming, lapping up the newfound empowerment that enveloped them. Jason knew this was not just about implementing change but rather about breathing life into culture through empathy. As they wrapped up, Jason felt a shift surging within him. He had begun to melt away the isolation that had shadowed him since his initial boardroom encounter. Yet a new pang of fear settled in his stomach. What if this moment didn't translate beyond these walls? The journey ahead seemed even more daunting now, filled with uncertain pathways. What actions would be required to maintain this momentum? Jason's resolve hardened. He would not just be the leader behind an initiative, he would embody the empathy and support they all craved. As he exited the room, a thought lingered: how to ensure these authentic voices would be interwoven into their practices consistently. The unfolding tension of what lied ahead only propelled him further. What strategies could help ensure their vulnerable discussions were not a one-off but the foundation of their evolving culture? Weeks slid into the horizon as Jason Turner stood at the helm of his company's transformation. A sense of clarity enveloped him, hovering over the uncertainty that had dogged him for far too long. Today represented a changed man, a leader unafraid to challenge convention in pursuit of a vision built on empathy and connection. The pilot program had officially launched, spearheaded by the marketing team, his initial choice for cultural enhancement. Metrics began creeping upward, but what was even more tangible was the spirit. Employees who once languished under the weight of indifference now carried the vigor of engaged participants. Personal stories were shared, collaborative goals were set, and for the first time, the echoing laughter from common spaces pronounced a collective heartbeat. Instilling humanity into the DNA of the organization was not merely wishful thinking, it was burgeoning into reality. Jason frequently found himself revisiting the morning after the pilot launch, sipping coffee while staring out over the sprawling city. The view once invoked dread, now, it bore promise. His mind raced with the voices from the brainstorming sessions, illuminating pathways that can lead to camaraderie and innovation. Mia's insightful words lingered with him, urging him to embrace his role as a catalyst, to champion the rare stories behind every employee. In meetings with the board, the discussion shifted, transforming from skeptical caution into cautious enthusiasm. Metrics from the pilot program illuminated a profound truth: the alignment of personal development with business objectives could generate results that surpassed quarterly projections. Each meeting became an arena of new possibilities, where Jason translated numbers into narratives of resilience and growth, a blend he had refined into an art. One afternoon, just after the monthly meeting with the board, Jason learned that a prestigious business magazine wanted to feature him. The article was to highlight his progressive approach to leadership, illustrating the way he had turned adversity into opportunity for not just himself, but for the entire organization. It was a moment of affirming triumph, external validation that his transformation into a human-centric leader was recognized not only internally but in the industry at large. Achieving this recognition speaks to the transformative culture we've created together, Jason proudly communicated at the casual gathering that followed his announcement. This journey remains collective, each of you plays a pivotal role in shaping our future. The reactions were electric. Team members exchanged relieved glances, and the room buzzed with aspirations. This validation solidified his resolve. He had redeemed his position not merely as a CEO but as a compass steering a ship toward purpose over profit. His initiatives had shifted from top-down declarations to collaborative discussions where every voice mattered. Days later, bolstered by gratitude and newfound momentum, Jason returned to the park where it had all begun, the place where Mia had handed him Milo, triggering his journey of reflection and growth. Here, amidst innocence and laughter, he found solace. The landscape had changed, though the memories still resonated within him. He sat, Milo cradled in his lap, and recalled the initial solitude and despair that had once dictated his existence. He reflected on the transformative choice to pursue a more authentic leadership model, his capacity to encourage vulnerability over fear, and the continuous evolution toward a more compassionate company culture. With that reflection came a deep-seated satisfaction, a solidity within him forged not through the relentless pandemic of profits but by the warmth of human connection. Jason felt a newfound sense of self-acceptance settle over him. No longer paralyzed by past failures, he had stepped into a new era, not just for himself, but for each employee who walked into the company each day hopeful of a brighter future. He had accomplished the unthinkable. He emerged as a hero in his own right. Inspiring expansive growth not through authority, but through authenticity. As he watched kids playing in the distance, laughter echoed like a joyous score, and Jason could finally allow himself to relish the moment. He smiled, clutching Milo instead of work papers, knowing he had conquered the initial fears that threatened to undermine his potential. This was only the start. He had paved the way toward a new legacy, yet he was ready to share his evolution, captivate others in the transformation narrative. As the sun began to set, he resolved to document his journey, a guide for budding leaders facing similar crossroads. His path would become a beacon, proof that true success isn't merely dictated by spreadsheets, but thrives on an unwavering belief in human potential. Join him on this journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about this transformative journey, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second to share and inspire others. You never know who may be on the verge of transformation themselves.